means that there's a persistent problem. And it's just like crime or cold or things like that. These are symptoms. They're not causes. And so what you're dealing with a symptom. And when you deal with symptoms, you can only address those symptoms and medicate. You're not dealing with the cause. And which means that it will persist as long as you're dealing with symptoms. And we as a society don't get into the underlying causes of this illness that has manifested itself in various ways in our society. I liken it to I liken it to an addiction. We are in America, and I think the world to some degree, it's just a matter of who is being prejudiced against, or who is being hated against, and who is the hater, who's the one that has advised it. You can, in America, it's usually associated with minority groups. You go somewhere else, it might be a religious group. You go somewhere else, it may be a particular clan or whatever it may be. But this thing persists, and I say it's an addiction. We will never overcome it until we deal with the addiction. And give you an example. One of the hardest things I ever stopped doing, and this was decades ago, was stop smoking. And I was smoking everything, and then I got to the point when I would limit myself how many I would smoke a day, or under what circumstances would I smoke after a meal or whatever it might be, and then I quit for a week or two or three, and then I go back, and then I got to the point I was a bummer. I just bummed cigarettes. And so there's things. So I don't care what I did, but there were periods of time in which I could control the addiction. And just like alcoholism or drug addiction or addiction to nicotine or whatever addiction it is, food addictions, all those kind of things, I got to the point I could control it. Now, the addiction was still there. I was just disciplined enough at that moment and that period of time to not do it. So, but every day, my life was built around whether or not I was going to smoke a cigarette and when I was going to smoke it. You see, and I imagine if there's a food addiction, is what I eat, when I eat, all this stuff. But it manages your life. I mean, it really controls you. All addictions control you. You're not in charge. The addiction is in charge, and you get disciplined to the point where you can at least go through the thing and appear to be something or not. Well, one day, lo and behold, one day I forgot to smoke. I just forgot to smoke. And so I woke up in the middle of the night. I woke up in the middle of the night realizing the fact that I forgot to smoke. I jumped up out of bed, searched out, but remember now I'm a bummer. So I ain't nobody to bum it from in the middle of the night where I'm gonna go get a cigarette, right? And so I woke up in the middle, I searched out, I found a butt. Found a butt. I lit that sucker, and it was the nastiest tasting thing that it was just pure nasty. From that point on, I knew I would never smoke again. It no longer controlled my life. I didn't build my life or my day around whether or not I was going to smoke 3 today, 5 today, smoke after the meal, smoke only when I got home. You know, that whole thought process where I was putting on this frontier, but then I was over it, all that was gone. And so what I learned from that is when you get to the point that you no longer have to think about it, is no longer part of your thought process every day, then you have just overcome the addiction. But as long as you're thinking about it, and as long as you're going through some behavior or putting in place some policies or protocols as organizations to address this, you are still addicted. And racism still prevails. And that's what it is. That's what it is. And we as a society have not overcome this addiction. Now again, this is not unique to America. You know, the uniqueness of this sickness and this illness is who is the subject of the bias, the prejudice, the racism, the classism, who is the subject. And that is more of a cultural, national kind of thing, whatever part of the world you're in, whatever country you come from. And so it changes who the object is, who the object of this thing, who is being opposed. But it's the same addiction. It's the same addiction. It could be a gender bias. It could be sexual preference bias. It could be just whatever you want to. Just put it on there. That's what it is. And it will differ again from society to society, country to country, culture to culture. But it's still there. And in America, it's associated with race primarily, African Americans and other minorities. And it has become more and more prevalent that it's not only race, it is class in America. And we are moving towards this thing of religion. That's where we're moving in that direction now. So that's where we are. So now, if this is your occupation, you have job security. You have job security because we are still addicted. And we will continue to be addicted until we address the underlying causes of this thing. And what is in us that needs to have this thing, if we're the dominant group, what is it in us that requires us to have this thing in order for us to be who we are? I'll give you an example. And since we're all grown in here, and we're talking open and honestly, slavery was an economic venture. It was just pure capitalism, and the slave was just a means of production. It was just like whatever you need as a capital item to produce the product that produced the wealth. So that's all it was. And there was a justification for it, and that became part of the culture, the society, the religion. So there was justification for it. It was justified. Whether it came through the religious aspect of it or whatever, or the Darwinian approach to lesser of the species or whatever it might be. But it was justified. It was justified. So as time went on, and it became something that is people felt that it should not be. And we're past the Civil War, we're past Reconstruction, we're even into the today, right? There are groups of people, good people, very good people, who do a lot of things to try to remedy the disparity and the disadvantage of that disparity. And they do good work. They're good people doing good work. And they feel good about it. Actually, they feel good about it. And so if you and what we call, and when I was in college, they call it the white man's burden. The white man's burden. How the white man has the burden of raising this child, the black man, and culturalizing this group of people, the black man. And in doing that, it became a very Christian thing to do. A very ethical thing to do, and people felt good about their efforts in that regard. To the point it becomes now part of the identity of the burden, those who have the burden. But in order for that feeling good, in order for that person to continue to be in that posture and be fulfilled by what they're doing, that means that black men have to be in constant need of them. They have to be in constant need, because if there's true equality, then there is no need. Then where does my identity go? Where's my identity then? If you have a society, let's take away the white man or the black man. If you have a society and that society is beginning to move in a direction where it talks about we're going to do this, and all of a sudden, then that becomes their identity. How do they exist as who they are if you've taken away the object of what creates their identity? How do they exist anymore? It's a contradiction to empower those who you have traditionally and intend to oppress. And if you need to be who you are by them continue to be who they are, then you will never allow for equity and equality, because it will destroy who you are and the relationship of who they are. And they have just as big a problem, because now they have to reinvent themselves in order to feel that they don't have to be subject themselves to this stuff. So it's on both ends. It's a complete reordering of the way we look at things. That it has an emotional, psychological impact on us as individuals, as communities, and as a culture, and as in our society. And it is based on this need that we have as, we're all political creatures. I'm professional about it, but we're all political. You don't have to be in government to do politics. I've seen some of the most vicious politics happen in families and in churches. And our politics is an honorable profession. It's an honorable profession. It's all in how you play the game. You can play the game this way, or you can play it that way. It's all in how you engage. It's all in how you can play the game. But the essence of politics is not what people think it is. It is not you scratch my back, I scratch yours. It is about who's the boss, who's in control, who has the power. And the politics of it is that each society, each governmental structure sets the rules to access, maintain, and use that power, and it's designed to do that without shedding blood. In America, it's just to vote. You vote, you electoral college, all this kind of stuff. You go to a monarchy and you just happen to be born to the right set of parents. You access power there, you in a parliamentary system, is whichever party controls parliament, right? All these kinds of, so there's different, and in some parts of the world, just whoever got the biggest gun. Whoever got the biggest gun, you the boss. Now, if you acquire, through the game of politics, if you acquire power, authority, and influence, and you acquire that, and you have that, and you sit in that seat, and if you use it for yourself, your friends, and family members, you are a crook. And you don't have to violate the law. It does not have to be a technical violation of the law. You're a crook. But if you use it for the purpose to represent that which you were there for, that's what you're supposed to do, whether I like it or not. You won. It's your world. You lose, that's on you. Today's, last year's election with President Trump. I don't know how all of you voted or what your opinions are, but it was a transferring of power. And in America, it was done without the shedding of blood. But it is a distinct difference between the presidency of Obama and the presidency of Trump. And you have an entirely different constituency base that is expressing itself. And now they feel empowered to express themselves, and they're free now to actually be what they say and do what they believe is right. They're free. They're free. They're in charge. They're in charge. So you combine since we're human and politics is in everything, in this room with 39 people, I bet you 39 people, and we put something on the table right now. I put something on the table, an issue that is so important and so essential and so critical that the decision has to be made now. It has to be made now. It has to be made now. And no one can abstain and no one can leave the room. You've got to deal with this, and before you leave this room, it's got to be resolved. And even though all of you get along because you have the luxury of getting along because you don't have to be in each other's space for the moment in time, I will guarantee you, out of this many people, you will have at least 5, perhaps 7 factions as to how to deal with that critical issue that must be resolved now. And what you will be struggling over is whose point of view will prevail. That's pure politics and it's about power. Because you're the boss. And if you cannot come to some kind of agreement as to what that is, it could break down into an altercation, a fight, which is they call war. Or you would establish a process by which you would come to an agreement that you say you would all abide by. In America, you would vote. In a parliamentary system, they have their own rules, right? If it was the king and the queen, they would just enter the room and tell you what you're going to do. And in some parts of the world, it is about who's got the biggest gun. But it's all about power. It's all about control. Now, when you have that, and forgive me for the long-winded, I'm just trying to put it in the context. When you have that, people believe that money is power. That's not correct. Power produces wealth. Money is just an indicator of something. It's like an indicator. It's a tool. It's a mechanism. Money is money. Hell, you can put value in this chair. That becomes your currency, right? You get seashells. That could become your currency. We got a piece of paper, and that is our currency. It means nothing. It's an indicator, right? It's a tool. It's about wealth. It's about wealth. And money does not produce power. Power can determine wealth. Give an example. We have sports figures that probably make tens of millions of dollars a year. Tens of millions of dollars a year. Do they have power? No. But they have influence. Why? Because people will kiss you behind for $1. And they can influence someone to buy a tennis shoe, to buy a car, to buy whatever it is. That's why they have on commercials. But they don't have power. President Trump and President Obama, what did they make? $400,000, $500,000 a year? But do they have power? Yes. Why? Because they can determine by regulations and rules and getting stuff done through legislative things through Congress, they can determine who gets and who does not get. Where does wealth flow to, and where does it come from? And all that is about is who pays the taxes, who don't pay the taxes, who benefits from this rule and regulation, who benefits, and they create wealth. They create wealth among groups of people. Right? So, you tell me where the niceness of we should not be prejudiced comes. You tell me how that's going to work in that kind of world. When in fact, just the distinction and existence of the layers of class and race and all that is one of the determinants of who is wealthy and who is poor. And they just gonna give that up? Oh no, it ain't gonna happen. And if wealth goes up and we do things in government and there are rules and regulations and legislation and you do things in business practice stuff and the wealth goes up, that is what? Capitalism. If you change the rules and everything and the regulations and pass legislation and wealth start going down, what do you call that? Socialism. It's the same game. It's only different is who's getting it, who's benefiting from it. And they label these things in a political sense to cause people to have an emotional reaction to it, that even they react in a way that's contrary to their own best interest. To their own best interest. And if you're trying to empower, full circle, if you're trying to empower those who you intend to oppress, and it traditionally have, and if your wealth and position and status in life and who you are as an individual in society is jeopardized by that empowerment, you think they're going to let it happen? No way. No way. I think they call it institutional racism. It's classism, racism, and all the isms of the world, whether it's capitalism, socialism, communism, you can give me an ism. All isms are designed to divide people. It divide people based on ideological points of view, philosophical points of view, and the politics of who's the boss. And if you're the boss, you get your way. If you're not, you beg. And anybody who believes you don't have that true essence of the way this thing operates. So that's my little commentary, and I will gladly answer any questions you have, as I say, on this or anything else. And I will tell you that these are not new issues, but they're very relevant today because one of the things that I think people are manipulators, and what has happened is, out of all of what's going on, all of a sudden now you have people concerned about poor people. Now, I would tell you, poor people is not a protected class. You can have sexual orientation. You can't do things based on gender. You can't do things based on race or ethnicity, even religion. You can't do those kind of things. You can do anything you want to poor people. Mm-hmm. Poor people are not a protected class. They're not. And so now all these elections and all this stuff that's going on is about populist movements, is about poor people, is about all of that kind of stuff. That's what people are talking about. That's what people are talking about. So now that is the issue out there. And so the question becomes, who's the friendliest to poor people? Now, after the game is over with, and whoever wins, the question becomes whether or not they were just doing the politics of that moment, or what are they going to do in regards to poor people because the system's not set up to do anything for them. And are you gonna put yourself at risk to represent what? It is what it is. So any questions?